To anyone that's lost, Dan Kumis' session, which is way better than mine, is next door.
Way to set the expectation.
It's embodying this. You say no to me and go see Dan. Well, I guess that means we're good to go. We're good to get started. Welcome, everybody. Excited to have you all here. I know it's the end of the day and it's kind of tiring, so we'll try to keep it light and fun. I do want to give the Slagle warning. There will be casual profanity interspersed in here, and I am a yeller. So if you feel like I'm yelling at you, then I totally am, and it's all your fault. So this talk's going to be about really kind of how to say no, but not just casually saying no, because that's pretty easy, no. It's going to be more about that idea as an owner or an employee, how you really need to focus on what you're best at and turn that into a weapon. And then you can use that to really kind of grow what you're doing effectively. See if I can figure out how to use the presentation remote. My remote said no to me. So before we get started, they give us these generic slides they wanted us to work in, and so I become ungovernable. Don't do what Mendy and Kyle tell you to do. But if for some reason you do want to download the Hoova app, you can download presentations, but only if the speakers uploaded them. We didn't upload them, so don't download the app. So who am I? I'm Dean. A lot of you might know me better as Dr. Zoidberg. Frequent shit poster on Reddit. I've probably told you that you're operationally unsound and stupid. And I also record videos that no one watches because they're awful. I have never owned an MSP, so I've never really been trapped in the visionary paradox. I've been an operations and service management professional my entire career. When I started in this industry, I entered an MSP that was just switching out of the break-fix model, roughly about $700K. And when I exited MSP, we're a little over $53 million, and I did all of that myself now. But it was a really cool experience, and I got to work at small, medium, and large MSPs, and I've been fortunate from the beginning to always be involved in peer groups, so I have a pretty good idea what it's like to be in an MSP. And then eventually, I decided that I would become a vendor and no longer have a soul. That's right, I'm now a vendor whore. And that's been really interesting, because now that I'm on the other side of the curtain, you guys are the worst clients ever. I don't know what I was thinking. So by day, I am the VP of Operations at Helped, and I will shill for that later. But I also do MSP operations coaching. That's my YouTube, and you'll support my ego, and that's my business TikTok or LinkedIn, whatever you want to call it, and you will support my ego if you want to join those things, and I'll feel really good. So I want to give you kind of like the presentation, too long didn't watch in case you've had enough, and you do want to go next door. So you can get the spicy bit out now, and then you're good. Or if you want to tune out and do something else. So saying yes to everything, it may feel good, right? Like when we say yes to stuff, it's a good feeling. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a value add, and it damn sure isn't white glove. And I know a lot of you like to put into your marketing or internal stuff that you offer white gloved high-end service, because we're all service providers. First of all, let me rip that Band-Aid off. No, you don't. And then that's fine. And then secondly, saying yes is not all white glove. So please cut that shit out. So moving forward here, so let's go over the problem statement in a little bit more detail. So the idea is that you want to stop saying yes and learn to say no. So executives, employees, there are a finite number of tasks that require your attention. There's only so much any of you can do. And have any of you ever experienced many hats? I'm sure everyone in here has, and you know that. And I understand that some of that's the nature of the business, right? Like somebody has to do it, and if it's not them, me. But that's not really, as anybody who's in here for Dave's talk earlier, that's not really very healthy, and it's also not very effective. So we need to be able to identify that we have way too many hats on and figure out how to start saying no and take some of those hats off so we can give them to other people. Also importantly, and so this is kind of two talks in one, by the way, that's because I wrote a real session to submit, and Kelvin rejected that one, so then I wrote a meme session and said yes to it, and didn't have a slide deck. So there's two slide decks in one. Apologies. MSPs often try to over-deliver. And it's a common thing that we see in many service-based businesses. It's really not an MSP problem, it's a service economy problem. We tend to over-deliver. And when we over-deliver, we tend to allow clients to dictate the solution. If anyone here is a Pika fan, that's letting somebody else make up your chocolate cake recipe. And that is a recipe for frustration, anxiety, and failure. We confuse catering to this with white glove and good customer service when we're probably not really offering either one of those, or if we are, the cost to that, sort of both from a literal cost of goods sold, but then also the opportunity cost and the mental health cost is so high that fine, maybe your MSP is so amazing that you literally wear white gloves, but like if you go home and cry at night, what's the point of it? So a subpar experience is delivered, we miss expectations, we burn out our staff. It's gross. We don't want that. So why do we say yes? Psychology is really important, and the way people think is really important. And so it's important to understand why you want to say yes, because it's not your fault. You were built to want to say yes. So saying yes makes us feel good. And that's the trap that a lot of people fall into. We assume the feeling is transitive. It's not. It's not transitive at all. And it can be a little bit, like if I go give Heather a gift, like if I give her something, she's gonna appreciate that. I will feel better about that for longer than she will. And that is a fundamental concept of human relationships you need to understand. It's also a really handy sales technique. As I have up here, that's the concept of reciprocity. And if you ever bought a car and you go in and they say, hey, can I get you anything? Would you like a bottle of water? That's reciprocity. And the idea is they're trying to build a little bit of goodwill from you. But what's funny about it is it's actually gonna make the salesperson like you more than it's gonna make you like the salesperson, because that's how giving and saying yes works. So it makes us like the person who asked us for the thing more, and it's powerful brain kung fu, and you're probably not really able to fight this. You might be aware of it, and you might mitigate it, but you're wired to operate this way. Because fundamentally, humans weren't made for this. We weren't made to be in massive groups like this. We were made to be in relatively small, intimate groups. This is a mechanism so that when two tribes meet, they don't all instantly murder each other when, like apples are exchanged. You're built this way. And unfortunately, other animals are built this way too. So, the monkeys, the dolphins, kind of all the same. So, a couple of the things that are important, reasons why I think we tend to say yes. We feel that saying yes is custom. How many of you have some sort of wording on your website where you will deliver something that is custom? Or basically, who let me ask that a different question. Who here, can I go to your MSP website right now, see your pricing, and click to buy? Yeah, there's not a single hand up. And the reason that I'm gonna get for that, and I know it's a little more complicated than this, but the reason I'm gonna get from that is, well, it's not that simple. I need to talk to them, I need to figure out their needs, I need to put together a presentation and a proposal. Some of you that are a little bit more high maturity might be saying, we have a perfectly aligned stack already, we come and deliver that package, but I still need to really talk to the client. You see, like right there, that's that idea that what I'm doing is custom and special, and it's a way of saying yes to the client and making them feel good. And you're not wrong, it does make people feel good. It just doesn't add as much value over the long term as you think it does. The client experience, right? Like when a client's upset or wants something, what's easier, saying yes or no? Saying yes. I mean, of course it is. I was a service manager for most of my life. What's easier? You violated our SLA, so sorry? Or we're so sorry that we let you down, what can we do to make it right? Like one of those is easier. Being subservient and saying yes is way easier than saying no. I like the easy path, right? Like I'm smart, but I'm lazy. So we're also wired to want the easier path. And then it's like strong sales. And what I mean by that is if you have really, really strong net new, so this is an operation, I'm a bitch, this is an operations person for a minute. If you have really strong net new, you tend to ignore your operations. Because, who cares if delivery is a hot mess if you have constant new logos coming in? Saying yes is appealing to that same dopamine hit, where if you're constantly saying yes to things, well then I don't actually have to address that I shouldn't be. It's almost like a drug that you get addicted to, and it's this sensation that, hey, I'm great, I'm making everyone happy, this is amazing because I'm saying yes. But you're kind of alone on an island with that. So I want to talk about that. So I'm going to call this the transitive property of good vibes. I made this up. This chart is based on something, I just can't remember what. So you have a chart here, XY axis. Over here we have the good vibes axis. And as we go up, the good vibes are higher. And over here we have the time axis. And as we come this way, more time has passed. When you enter into a relationship with a client or another person, usually you start somewhere around or a little bit above neutral. Most of us aren't so terrible that we start hopefully below the line is bad. So if you think of it like a client's chosen to buy from you. They like you a little bit, you're slightly above neutral. And you'll have, as you do things, positive things to them, say yes, little bitty jumps up. It's the first time that you did something wrong. Takes all this time of saying yes to get back up. One wrong. You guys see how that works? So what's important to understand from this, the small, slow upticks are times you made someone else happy. The big, quick dips are any time you made someone unhappy. You see how much more impactful making someone unhappy is on the relationship than making them happy? And I know that's a weird example because I'm almost like counterintuitive to the point, but what I want everybody to understand is that the yeses don't have the same value over time as the nos. So the goal here is not to have a bunch of no's. You want to avoid the no's. It's just not to get wrapped up in thinking that saying yes is having the opposite net effect this way. It's not. So, as I just said, saying yes and making someone happy, it has less effect than screwing up. When we make a mistake, it is way more impactful and way more remembered than when we say yes to somebody. When we screw up, there's a big instant dip. When we do a good job, it's a very small, slow uptick. And you have to build that back. And anyone here who's ever let down a client, you know this. Like, even if, and this is one of my favorite things to rant about is we talk about best in class. Even if you did a best-in-class job recovering from that failure, and you're like, wow, we're amazing, like we restored your entire system in 3 days from bare metal because the DR failed, and like literally that data, like bit by bit, we rebuilt it, and we used the transaction logs and the SQL table to rebuild your database, and like, we're the fucking greatest MSP ever, and your client's just like, assholes, I didn't want to be down, like what the hell? Like, they're not looking at it that same way. And so it's this trap you fall into with really interpreting how your client relationships work with yes and no. You need to avoid the dips. You have to start saying no to things. The idea is we want to put ourselves in a situation where we are less likely to have those no dips. Because the yeses don't really help us that much, but the no's really hurt us. So this is kind of where this talk is going to kind of branch out a little bit. So there's kind of two audiences in this talk. There's business owners and thinking about this more at the MSP level, and then there's employees, the people who work for a living. And we have sort of more of a micro size or a tactical need to say no ourselves. So just to get a little bit of an idea, how many of you are like an owner or very high level decision-making executive? And I would assume that means the rest of you actually work for a living. Good for you. So we'll spend a little bit more time on the employee side of stuff than the business owner side. And as you can see, I like the drama. So we'll talk about the MSP part first. So you really want to start thinking about focusing on your core MSP. We don't repair printers here. And what I mean literally is, how many, this is a silly example, but how many of you actually will rip open a printer and physically fix it? I don't see a single hand. And I bet if I were to bring a microphone up to any of you and ask why, you would say, it's not what we do, it's super time consuming, we don't even know how to do it, we don't have the tools, the hell with that. And everyone here is very capable of saying to a client, you need a warranty repair service, or a service contract, or replacement, we're not touching that. Why aren't you doing that with everything else? You're clearly already capable of saying that. And so that's an important concept because there are people here who think the MSP version of I should fix every single printer. I should say yes to it. This is a great idea. So I want to give an example because I like to do this. If you watch any of my content, I like to make analogies. Imagine that you own a sushi restaurant. I don't know if anybody here likes sushi. If anybody here has, sorry, I'm losing my voice from the other night. I don't know if anybody here has ever eaten at an authentic sushi restaurant. So I mean like the kind where you're on a side alley in Japan, you go in, it's bar top seating only, there is a sushi master who speaks zero English, and you go in, how do you eat sushi? Well, in that sushi bar, everything is set up to deliver sushi perfectly. The tooling, the ingredients, the setup, the prep area, the point of sale, even the dining area is all designed to give a curated, dialed-in experience. There's even a way you eat your sushi. I don't like sushi or fish, which is weird because I like crabs and lobsters, but you don't dip the sushi too much in the soy sauce, or you offend the sushi chef and you're a bad sushi person, you're not welcome back. But there's a way to do this. It's very dialed in, right? So could that sushi restaurant start serving steak? Well, objectively, yeah, probably. It's a chef. It's not stupid. He knows how to cook. Probably can make steak at home. There's probably a flat top somewhere, even though sushi is raw, like there's probably something that could cook. It's a restaurant. The fixturing's there. They have the license. They have a way to store it. They have a way to pay for it. They have, plates and serving utensils. So sure, could it make steak? Should it make steak? And that's where you get trapped, because you start translating this idea of could I with should I. Should it make steak? No, probably not. No. And why? Because it's not a Denny's. And that's obviously a really silly example, but think about that for a minute. You went there to a high-end sushi restaurant, and if any of you had a dining experience, you go to a restaurant that has a 20-page menu. Is anything good on that menu?
No.
So in the same way, if your MSP has a 20-page menu of stuff you've said yes to, is anything particularly good on that menu? Probably not. I mean, you might be proud of it because you're making it, it's your kitchen, you're not pushing out garbage, but nobody in that dining room at that Denny's is like, listen, I gotta meet the chef. That was the best Denny's. That changed my, Dave Cole's here, sandwiches. That Denny's sandwich.
Can I talk to Denny?
Yeah, exactly. You're not doing that. But if you go to that bespoke sushi restaurant and you're gonna offer to, buy the guy around a sake, because holy shit, that was the most amazing experience you've ever had, and I don't even like fish, yeah, you will. And that's what we all want. Remember we said before, you all want to deliver a white glove experience, but you're running Denny's. So you're probably sitting there and you're like, listen, okay, fun analogy, but I don't make sushi, you idiot. Well, yeah, you do. And what I mean by that is you have a core business offering. And to rip the Band-Aid off a little bit, I got another slide for this, but I'll rip it off twice. No one in here is different. Everybody understand that? You're not special, you are not different, you are all doing exactly the same line of business. You are solving the same pain, you are solving it with the same methods. You might be executing the nuance a little bit differently, so you might be using low sodium soy sauce. You might be using soy sauce that you make in your garden at home, which is super cool because it's from scratch soy sauce, but you still gotta have soy sauce. And as an MSP example, what are we doing here? We have some sort of ticketing system, we have an RMM, we have a way to remotely connect in, we have a security stack, we generally have some sort of preferred networking equipment that we work with, we have some sort of desktop and server brand that we mostly sell and service and are comfortable with, rinse and repeat over and over until the heat death of the universe. So fundamentally, you're all doing the same thing. And there's this desire, this passion that entrepreneurs have that they want to be different and special. And they love that. And I hope none of the owners in here ever let that spark die. But you do need to remember that ultimately, your restaurant is following the same basic process of delivery, your MSP restaurant. Anything more than a standard deviation from that core offering is serving steak at the sushi restaurant. So if you quite literally make a normal distribution of everything that you offer, and you do a regular distribution and a standard dev, anything that's a standard dev over, cut that shit out. That's serving steak at a sushi restaurant. I don't care if you can, and I don't care if it sometimes makes money. It is not what you're good at, and it is not driving your core business to be successful. And we're not Geek Squad, right? Nobody here wants to be Geek Squad. And even if your model is similar to what Geek Squad is doing, very transactional B2C, you don't want to be this generic faceless behemoth that serves crap. And I won't name any names because this is a polite company, but we all know some of the mega monolith PE MSP groups, and we all know how much we love them because they just feed us clients. They come in, they buy up one of our competitors, and then a year later, we're like, pew, pew, fuck yeah, this is awesome. Everybody needs a new MSP. This company destroyed the entire client base. Because they're being a Denny's and a Geek Squad. This is my slide that was supposed to make fun of all of you, even my So some of you are going to be hearing what I'm saying, and superficially you're like, all right, I get it. Like I can't be chaotic. But ultimately you're also arguing to me that I shouldn't just do what my clients want. And as a service and operations manager, this is a really, really big problem point that we have in figuring out how we're going to unfucking deliver the dreams that all of you owners sell to people. Is the customer always right? Well, first of all, I know many people understand the sentence is fundamentally misinterpreted. We know that academically, but literally, the customer is always right. It was about in matters of taste. So that means that like if your client's like, I want shitty beige Lenovo towers, you're like, you got it, boss. It does not mean that you suddenly redo your recipe to suit what every individual client wants. Something I used to tell the owner of our company, if the client knew what they were doing already and what they wanted, they wouldn't need us, right? And anyone here who does co-managed, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because those co-managed departments have some sort of IT manager, maybe actually a real IT manager, and boy do they have fucking opinions. And a lot of those do not align with ours, even if they're smart. So if the client knew what they want, they would tell you. And most of us as MSPs, our clients don't know what they want. So taking what they want as a problem statement and not really figuring out what they need and delivering what you're best at is a losing proposition for you. Kevin Tkowitz gave a presentation earlier on home automation. And one of the things he was talking about when he was doing that presentation was he was going through this way of assessing a problem and not assuming that you automatically know the solution. And so the technician, the tactical example of this is my printer is broken. So, okay, so support ticket comes in, my printer is broken. And right away, who here jumped to networking? Or, you know, it's misconfigured, or if you're Dean, it's user error, fucking layer 8, you know? Like, you're jumping immediately to what it could be. Did we bother to qualify what's actually going wrong? And the example Kevin gave earlier, which was really good, was like, what if the actual, what they mean is it's printing the wrong shade of blue? Well, I can't fix that. And that's why it's important to not allow your client to dictate the solution that you are presenting. So fundamentally, should you do something people want to buy? Absolutely, that's what the statement means. Should you cater your offering based on the whims of your client and your assumptions of what that means? No, you're not a Denny's. So, all right, I've told you what not to do, and I've done it rather caustically and antagonistically, so what should you do? So there is a wonderful magical cheat code. This is probably one of the most simple things you can solve at the entire conference. You need a scope of work. You need a SAO. If you're a fan of Brad Gross or any of the other MSP legal teams that are out there, they're basically going to tell you that you need two things when you bring on a client. You need an MSA, Master Service Agreement, and that defines the relationship you're going to have as business entities. And then you need a scope of work. And the scope of work isn't a legal document. It's attached to the MSA, but you don't have to get, you know, a lawyer's approval to change it. And that simply lists what you will and won't do. It's your menu. And you need to be specific and seriously, as deliciously specific as you want. So if you really do want to define a Denny's length menu, it has to be in the SAO. I mean, that's gonna suck, I wouldn't do that. But it has to be in the SAO. Once that SAO exists, do not deviate. Seriously, don't, like ever. It's on the SAO. And if somebody says to you, I want you to do X, Y, Z, or could you do X, Y, Z, or hey, I see that you say you support networks and I need a cabling job done. That's network related. Could you do it? Could I? Yeah, I could do it. I know how to run cable. I know how to crimp, you know, A standard, right? No, nobody here. I was trained A standard. I was an AV guy in the past. I know how to crimp cables. Like, I know how to do all that. Should I be doing that? No, I'm the VP of operations. Like, what the fuck? So you have to kind of differentiate what it is on your SAO you can do and what you won't do. And you need to then, and this will come up a little bit later, be able to reframe what they asked in the context of what you can do. So just to continue hammering this point home, you really cannot deviate from it. And that SAO becomes to a certain, like your commandment, your constitution. It's, if you have, you know, core values, your SAO is your other rock. It's your other pillar that holds up your MSP. It will change. I'm not saying it's permanent, but it's what your MSP fundamentally will and will not do. It is your perpetual promise to your clients and your staff. When you are put in a position, this is specifically for owners and executives in this room, when you are put in a position where you are considering violating your SAL, everybody has been there. A deal comes in, and that deal, that revenue, that is a spicy meatball. And if I could just figure out how to take a bite out of that meatball, tomorrow would be amazing, and fuck future Dean, but he'll figure it out. When you have that moment, and every business owner in here has that moment probably weekly, right? Because of course you do. It's why you're business owners, and it's honestly why you're good at being business owners, because you feel that way. When you feel like you're going to violate your SAL, you light the beacons of Gondor. I don't care who your accountability buddy is. I highly advise it be your team, and you go to them, and you basically say, here's what I'm about to do. What do you think? And you give them the chance to say, boss, no, we're not at Denny's. That's not in the SAL. What are you doing? You use that peer accountability. And if you're somebody in this room who says, I'm not going to ask my team, to double check my business decisions, harumph and such, I'm a business owner and they're employees. I do get that, fair, they're not peers. What would you tell your techs? When they're in front of a client and they don't know the answer to something, do we tell our techs to just make shit up? No. What does everyone here say? What does everyone that we've ever been to that talks about customer service say? Is you have your techs, when they're in front of clients, they don't know the answer, say, hey, I don't know, let me get back to you. Right? Isn't that what we tell our techs that our clients will respect that? They'll respect them saying, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to check with the team and come back to you. Well, if you're an owner and a client puts you in a position to violate your SAL, first of all, there's no deal worth closing. It has to be closed in that minute. You can close it later, and if you suck at sales, I'm sorry, you can still close it later. If it needs to be closed in the next 5 minutes, that's already signs of a toxic engagement. You're a long-term service delivery company. So if a client catches you where you're like, I really want to violate this SAL, you say to the client, all right, we have a scope of work. We don't normally do that. I'm pretty sure the answer is going to be no. Let me go back and check with my team and strategize with them, make sure I understand what you're asking for, and see if it does align with what we're doing. Buy yourself that time, get out of that emotional situation, go back to your office, take a deep breath, be like, I just tried to sell a steak at my sushi restaurant. And then go tell your team, go laugh about it. And then ask them, because you're gonna, right? You're going to go ask your team, be like, can we? Do you guys think we can do it? And your team, of course, they want to make you happy, so they're gonna be like, well, maybe figure out some sort of a ham sandwich that's kind of steak adjacent. And then your job, while that conversation's happening as the owner, is to realize, crap, I'm doing the thing, I'm putting everybody in this position. I should just go back to the client and say, we are really, really good at making sushi. It's not a matter of could we make steak, we just won't. So let's either reconnect on how our sushi is gonna fill your tummy tonight, or let me bring you over here to my buddy that runs a steak restaurant. It's amazing, you won't regret it. Other benefits of having a scope of work. A scope of work defines your entire MSP identity and deliverability. It can become a map you can use to refine other areas of the business. There are multiple people in this room that have business process consulting, groups and agencies. I see Cassie back there. We've got Eureka Process up here. There are a ton of people that can help you unfuck your business, but they're not magic, and it's not their business. So I'm sorry, but I don't care about your baby, and they definitely don't care about your baby. So if you're able to map out for them what you want your baby to grow up into by having a scope of work, well, that just got a lot easier. And when you meet with a consultant like that, instead of saying, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, help me, which I can tell you from doing that myself, no one wants that, because I was like, what am I gonna throw a life, preserver at you and spray you with a fire extinguisher and hope that was good enough. I want something that's actionable. I want to hear hey, we're having a lot of trouble with our, accounts receivable. We're constantly chasing AR. Our AR aging report says that. Our scope of work says that everything needs to be paid in full on the first of the month, and we're really just not hitting that. What do we do? Well, that's something that a consultant can immediately be like, here's 10 different ways we can get to that. What's your budget? What do you want to change? So a scope of work is going to help you have a lot of business clarity. It also helps you, to my marketing peeps, my sales and marketing people in the room, it helps you align your ICP, your ideal client profile. I am not a salesperson, and I'm not good at selling, and I'm just gonna guess that that's most of you should be nodding that you're also terrible at selling, or you wouldn't be here because you would own this conference. Most of us have a lot of trouble with this, with communicating our brand identity to the clients we want. A lot of us have a lot of trouble verticalizing, which makes things easier. You have a scope of work, and I go to a marketing agency or I hire a marketing person, I say, this is literally all the things we will make and that's it. I can package that up. I can find a way to explain that, to sell that, to commoditize that. Sorry, I know that's a dirty word. But that suddenly also becomes easier. So if you're struggling with how you sell as well, having a scope of work will just give you clarity around that. I also want to point out something here. I wrote my self notes, these are my speaker notes. There's a couple other things that are important to know when you have a scope of work. So a lot of MSPs tend to blend COGS, and you might be saying, so COGS are cost of goods sold. So your technician's labor is a COG. Any tool that you're selling is cost of goods sold. If I buy a computer, resell it to you, cost of goods sold. So a lot of MSPs have relatively unsophisticated initial financial setups because we started off, it was just us, or like us and one other person. You get a Stripe account and awesome. But you reach a point where you're doing a lot more than that. And I don't think there's probably like 4 people in the room that would not be lying to me if they said that at each maturity stage, they've redone their entire PSA GL mappings to now match what their COGS look like now. Nobody's doing that. So you start doing stuff like blending COGS. And why does that matter? Well, right now it doesn't, but as your MSP starts to get a little bit bigger and you're starting to think about my exit strategy, if I'm gonna sell, well, other people care about that. And if you've defined a scope of work and someday you have a light bulb moment where you say, I gotta get my financials to not be hot garbage. I can't be blending my Microsoft resale with my managed services bucket and just be like, yeah, it's cool, I know what it means. My CPA said it was okay, because like an investor or a PE firm is definitely not gonna buy you with that. Well, your scope of work gives you a roadmap to be like, all right, what am I actually doing and what needs to be realigned? It helps you standardize, which I could do an entire separate presentation on, so I won't talk a lot about it right now. And project delivery, which is an area that everyone in this room sucks at. I have never met a single MSP in this space that is good at project delivery. You're all terrible, I'm sorry. I was terrible too, so don't worry. We're all terrible. This helps make us slightly less terrible, because if all of your other offerings are standardized on a curated, simplified menu, right? Sushi restaurant. And somebody says, I want you to cater sushi at a wedding. Well, that's a project. And while I have a scope of work, I know exactly what I need. I know how to package this up. I know how to estimate this. I know how to figure out how I'm gonna bill for this. It's just a little bit easier. So let's switch a little bit and let's talk about the individual employee. I'm just doing a quick time check. I also have ADHD and lose track of where I was in my own shoes if they weren't tied on today. So employees in the room, you're pretty awesome. Seriously. You're the reason why all the owners here have businesses. That kicks ass. And you should all be really proud of yourselves. But you're just one person. So let's talk a little bit about the 80-20 rule in sales. And this part specific, if you're an owner right now, you can go to sleep. You can listen if you want. This isn't for you. You already know this. Employees, 80-20 rule. There's this idea in sales, whether or not you believe it, we're just using it as a thought experiment, that only about 20% of your customers account for the top 80 of your sales. It's this general idea that like a small portion of effort is going to result in a large portion of results, and then the rest of your effort is going to have a fairly low return on results. Everybody kind of get that general concept? So let's look at this from a technician standpoint. And because you're at this conference, my guess is going to be that you're probably not the like tier 0 FCR person, because if your MSP could afford to send you here and not have you on the phones, I want to talk to you. I'd like a job. So if you're a technician that's here, you probably do some sort of escalations of some type, whether those are formal escalations or just peer-to-peer in the room. You're probably helping your peers in some way. And I'm gonna guess that there's a fair amount of those escalations that aggravate you in some way because they're either a waste of your time, there's something someone else could have done, the result of something not being set up right, somebody being incompetent, whatever. But you just know, and this isn't an ego thing, like I'm better than this, you just know that this is inherently not what I should be doing, but if I don't do it, the service department will burn down, and like they will be crying, weeping, and babies, and just be awful. It's just an apocalypse. So I have to do the escalations. But in most cases, the top 80% of those escalations are coming from a relatively small subset of people. Asterisk, unless your entire MSP is just completely screwed up, and I can't fix that. So I'm assuming that's not the case because you're here, so that means that your owner values education and growth, so your MSP is doing something right. So it's not everyone on your team that's wasting your time, but it probably is a distinct, and maybe you're nodding along and you already know who I'm talking about. It's I don't know, it's Jerry, or it's Brandon, or Jeff, or other MSP employee names. But there's a few of them, and so they're generating all of this nonsense escalation work, and it's aggravating you. And you want to just wring the life and watch their eyes fade away as they disappear, and just have them be gone, because you would rather be fixing the printers we talked about earlier than helping Jeff with another password reset, because we use Duo and it's a fucking button. And what are you doing? It's in the KB. Are you literally stupid? Like, right? So how do you say no to that? Well, you can't, right? Like, you can't just say, no, I'm not gonna help you. Like, besides operationally, it's not good for the MSP, like, kind of being a jerk if you just tell a teammate no. But you do need to find a way to tell these people you're not gonna help them. So you have to figure out how you're gonna push those escalations back. So the idea here, we're not saying, no, I'm not gonna help you at all with the escalation. What I am gonna say is that I'm gonna push that escalation back to the person that escalated it, and I'm gonna do that with intention, and I'm gonna understand why that escalation happened. It's the only way that you're gonna gain up sanity for yourself, and you're gonna train your teammates. So why do these escalations happen? I don't know how to do it. That's one of them. They think they don't know how. I don't have access to do it. That can happen. They whether that's real or not, they don't think they have access. I don't have permission to do it. I mean permission from an authority standpoint, not a permissions and AD standpoint. So in each one of these cases, there's ways to fix it. But your first job as that, whatever MSP tech you are, at whatever level you're at in your organization, you need to figure out why they're in one of these buckets. Why they either feel that they don't know how to do it, they don't have access to do it, or they don't think they have permission to do it. Because we're gonna trust that those feelings are coming from a real and earnest place. They may not be, and Jerry may be a piece of shit, but we're gonna assume initially that that was meant earnestly and honestly, and they genuinely do not think they know how to do it, they don't think they have access to do it, or they don't think they have permission to do it. Because once you figure that out, you can solve for all of those because you're amazing. We already said that a few minutes ago. You guys are amazing. Knowledge bases, training, SOP, TSI ticket mapping, all ways to direct somebody to the information so they can learn how to do it. And before anybody says that there's things only they know how to do, miss me with that bullshit. You're running an MSP. 90% of what happens there can be done by a properly trained T1. You are literally not putting rockets into space. And if you are an MSP for NASA, we're all gonna die. So that's not because of NASA, that's because I don't trust any of you. If they don't have access to do it, that could be an oversight. I was talking about that with somebody here the other day, that there are genuinely times where they don't have access to it, and that's wrong. They were supposed to have access to that tool. Maybe they were supposed to have access administratively to Duo to go reset that token. And so that could be true, and you might be like, oh shit, you're right, you can't do that. I'm sorry. All right, well, that's 10 minutes. I'm gonna log it in the ticket. That's fixed. I'm gonna make a note for myself to go back to the onboarding SOP so that we get that in there. So next time we don't make that mistake, good job, MSP, and you move on. And you don't spend 2 hours doing the task for them. It could be intentional. They're not supposed to have access. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. They might be right. And it's important for you to figure out, well, how did they get this ticket? If they do not have access, maybe it's to take down a server, and you don't let this level of employee have the ability to, hard set a server. Why did they get a ticket to hard power cycle a server? That's a whole thread you're gonna wanna pull on, but that might be really true. And other times, they may in fact have access and should be doing it, but they're just ignorant of the fact that they in fact do have access. I don't know about all of you, but we definitely didn't keep all our credentials in one place when I had an MSP. I know it's a little bit better now with tools like Keeper, but there's probably something that's maybe like in Hoodoo or IT Glue that isn't in Keeper, and you know where it is, and the employee technically has access to those things, but they don't know in the moment. And if you just let them know, hey, we keep those passwords over here, they won't have this escalation in the future. And then last, they don't have authority to do it or permission. Same idea. That could be an oversight. And we're going to cover that because this is a very, very common one. This is the one most of you are solving for already if you have a decent MSP because you understand training. This is the second most common reason almost none of you are solving for, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So it could be an oversight, and in fact, they should have the authority to do it. Once again, it could be intentional, that they should not. And then it's probably more likely it's something that's within their authority scope, and they don't realize that. You need to hammer that home. So I have a poster here that I made a long time ago, and I forgot to put the QR code for you to download this. Message me, I have it in like a vector format, so you can redo it, print it, put your own logo on it. But the idea of this is a authority scope pyramid. And this was originally designed for executives, but it works for employees as well. And the idea is that in a given period of time, you need to make decisions. And there's only so many things that you have permission or authority to do. So everything that comes to you gets filtered by this pyramid. The smallest number of decisions that should require you and only you are at that top part, and it is your job constantly, 365 days a year to, nobody laughed at that. I thought we didn't like them.
I cried.
That was right as well. Your goal should always be to have as few things up here as possible, and when you find something up here, you should critically look at it and kind of be like, is this really something that's only my decision? Most of the time it's not, and so most times when a team member comes to you with something that is absolutely within their authority scope and they don't believe it or they don't know it or they have imposter syndrome, you remind them that this is a you decision. I am empowering you to make the decision, you have full authority to make the decision, and you're also held accountable for making the decision. But that's cool because that's why we hired you and we trust you. You've got this. Get input, which is, hey, that's still your decision to make, but I'd ask a couple friends first. So you totally are authorized to take down that production server in the middle of the day. You might want to check with your peers though, if there's any other maintenance going on before you interrupt that. Team says, I want you to ask the team, come with the decision, come to me. I'll be accountable for the decision, but it's your decision to make. And then lastly, the things that are mine and only mine. And so for an executive, this makes a lot of sense. We have all the authority, but for employees, especially our tier 2s and our tier 3s, you actually control quite a bit of organic authority within your MSP that you probably don't realize that you've been given or taken. And it's important to remember that you don't invert this pyramid the other way around. Because even though you're still a technician at T2, T3, T4, whatever your title is, you still have a finite amount of authority and time in the day. Another important tool that for all my technical people to start using, this is a gimmick I got, I don't know, maybe like 12 years ago at a Taylor Business Group conference, is go get an orange traffic cone, literally, they make funny ones. And so if you're in an in-person office, it's a little bit easier. If the orange cone is on the desk, everybody has to leave you alone. Like even if it's on fire, if the building's engulfed in flames, everybody here knows how to hear a fire alarm. So if you burn to death because your orange cone's up, that's on you. Put that in your HR policy. Virtually, if you're using Slack, Teams, whatever, that's your status. You just pick a status that your orange cone says, but make it theatrical. The point of this is that it's an absurd theatrical gesture that should cause another person to be, what is going on with that? To remind them that you are currently focusing on you time and not to interrupt you. The idea here is not to say I'm too busy or important to talk to you, because you're not, none of us are. We want to help our teammates. It's to reinforce for them, could I solve this without bothering you? It's to trigger in the person that's escalating to you, Donnie's not available. I do have the authority to do this. I might be able, you know what, I did find it. I found what, I'm gonna do it. Because 9 times out of 10, they are gonna do it properly because you guys are training your staff. Like you're not hiring dangerous idiots and giving them access to clients, I hope. And very importantly, it also allows you, remember we went back earlier, we said saying yes makes you feel good? You're not saying no, the cone's saying no. Fuck the cone. The cone's an asshole. But it wasn't you. You would never say no. The cone said no. It gives you a theatrical element that you can help reframe your emotional response to wanting to say yes to around an object, and now the whole thing's anthropomorphized, and that's a lot easier for our brains to understand. The cone's out, sorry, is way different than Dean doesn't want to talk to you, right? Those are two totally different things in my brain. So you got to this point and you're probably saying, all right, I freed up a little bit of time. What do I do? Like, how do I know that I'm good? You know, the whole point of the talk was focused on what you're good at. Sold. So I'm at this point. I freed up time. I pushed down my escalations. I'm hot to trot. What next? Well, you need to figure out, my wonderful, beautiful employees, what you actually do. Because a lot of us, right, who here was handed the job description and now what you do is, you know, leagues, not that, and you've never redefined it. Or even better, your boss has said, I want you to help me define your role, which is, for all the managers in here, that is a to the employee. So, you know, don't do that, even though you're going to. So employees, you need to go in and make a list of everything you do for work. I made a janky little template for you. Break down that list by things you do daily, weekly, and monthly. You can be as specific or as general as you want, but the more specific you get, the easier the next step will be. Don't put what you think your boss wants to see, but what you really do. If you're underutilized because you really don't need to be and you spend most of the day doom scrolling Reddit, then put that down. This is for you, not for your boss. And that might not be a bad thing. If you've gotten to the point where your role is that dialed in, I'm actually kind of proud of you. But put what you really do and be honest. Don't put, this is not the dentist where they say to you, are you flossing daily? And you're like, well, not daily. Instead of saying, no, I barely floss at all. Like, don't lie, you're not helping anyone here. Be honest about it. It's gonna help you in the next step. There's things that you're doing that you don't need to be. So what are you good at? How do you even know that? I mean, I'm an employee. I was hired to, you know, fix printers, reset passwords, navigate SharePoint, you know, and other such magical skills. I don't know what I'm good at. I do the thing. I pick up the box, I put the box down, there's more boxes here, and move on. You know, am I good at boxing? So you need to take your daily, weekly, monthly, and you need to look for patterns. You want to identify areas of that list that fall into these categories on the side. And a way to do that is you go through each thing your daily, weekly, monthly, and you think about it. Has this skill or task helped me thrive up till now? That could be as simple as, I got the job because I could do the thing. I can pick up boxes, so they hired me. Cool, that helped you thrive. What makes me feel strong? And I mean this seriously, like what elements of what you do during the day just make you feel good? Like, hell yeah, like I am the best fucking Google Workspace admin on earth. And I feel good about it, because no one else on my team knows anything about it. I'm not. What made you stand out as a child? I think this is really important because everybody here had something when they were a young person that people around them commented on that they did that was interesting or cool or special or fun. There was something. And odds are you still have that, even if you haven't made that your primary focus as an adult. That's probably a cornerstone spark of whoever you are now as a person. I was really loud and talkative as a child, and I'm still really loud and talkative. So what made you stand out as a kid? And what compliments do you ignore? Almost everybody here has imposter syndrome because we work in tech, and we never think we're good enough. So odds are your clients, your peers, your boss, your family members, your cat, your dog, dog's better, have complimented you on something, and like many people with imposter syndrome, you sort of brush that off because, you know, they didn't really mean, they were joking, they didn't really mean that. So this is not a self-help session. You should have been here an hour ago if you wanted that. Dave gave an amazing session on that, but what I do want you to think about tactically is, what do I get complimented for, whether I believe the compliments or not? What do I get complimented for? You take all of that, and you're gonna do this. This is a Venn diagram, and you're gonna have 3 circles: things that require me, things I'm passionate about, and things I'm effective at executing. And I have it just in the middle here, but it's any of the overlap in the middle star. This is stuff you're good at. The stuff that's in the middle is the stuff that you're probably like supremely bestest at, but anything in those overlaps, that's a reasonable candidate for something that you are good at. And that's important because if anybody here remembers math, for is Connor here? Connor and me are the only people in this industry like math. Connor from Finn is a huge math nerd, and I mean like deep secrets, like Calc 4 level math nerd. So if anybody here is like super into math, you wouldn't think it because he's like this like stocky, like high energy little dude, super smart with math. So anything that is in this inner circle is less than the total volume of the circle. And that really gives you an idea right away. I'm probably reasonably good at these things. So as I'm trying to prioritize, push back on things and focus on what I'm good at, it's gonna be this stuff. There's a very reasonable chance it'll be this stuff. So now that we've done all of that, saying no, you gotta reframe it to a yes. Because as we arrived at before, when we let down a client, that's a huge dip. So we can't just walk around and be like, no, 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 no. We need a way that we're being positive about it while still actually saying no. So as I have here, give an interesting quote about the Disney method. So I'm sure you've all heard this before. If you guys, any of you went to build it, Cam had the entire team from Disney down there to talk about it. But we've all probably engaged with some sort of Disney content. If you've ever been to one of their hotels or their parks or their cruises, they do an amazing job at telling you what you can't do. In fact, it's almost everything. You can't do almost anything you want there. But if I ask any of you, what was your experience, you could be like, it was amazing, they did whatever I wanted. They curated anything I was willing to pay for, sign up for, they would do for me. No, that's not true at all. In fact, I would say compared to other amusement parks and other things, Disney is probably the most nope place that you can think of, but yet we hold that as the gold standard of how to treat people, of how to give a positive experience. So what Disney has done is they have gone in and made a scope of work of exactly what they can do. And anytime you ask for something that isn't on that scope of work, they immediately redirect their staff to know how to point you to something that absolutely they can do. And they do it seamlessly and they do it perfectly, and they trick your brain into thinking, fuck yeah, I got what I wanted. I got a photo with Goofy, fucking man. And you don't realize that that's on their list of 5 things you can do to Goofy. There's things you can't do to Goofy. So, you don't want 5 things to start with for a few reasons, because we talked about earlier, it's not how brains work, and it's not how your brains work. So instead of just refusing, you want to offer what you can do, but you really want to limit it to just a few options. I'm probably running I'll try to get through this quickly, sorry. So I think 2 is better to start with. So 3 is where we mostly go good, better, best, all of that. But once again, if any of you were really good at selling, you wouldn't be here. So let's just accept that we're all not great at selling. Make it a little easier. 2 options, 2 things you can do. And you want to reframe these as a positive that addresses whatever pain point it was that brought up the need for you to say no to begin with. Can your MSP manage my Hikvision NVR system and Wish.com cameras? Well, can it? Sure it can. I mean, it's a IP NVR, I'm not stupid. It's got a hard drive, it pulls an IP, it has SNMP, it's got a management page. The cameras are all IP connected. That's literally what I do. Yeah, I can have Ovid monitor them, set up, ping timing when they go down, alerting. I could do cameras as a service. Yeah, but no, you can't, because it's garbage, and we all know that's garbage, and we don't want to support it. So what do we say instead? When they say, can your MSP manage my garbage camera system? You don't say no. Instead, you say, we can absolutely look into putting your IP camera system into a segregated flat network, because not my fucking problem, and set up monitoring to alert up, down only. We'll let you know if it's on or off. We can direct those alerts to your team. I don't give a shit about your cameras. I'll let you know if they're up or down. If you bother to read those emails, that's on you to inspect the status of the cameras. I can do that, right? That's pretty reliable. That's not gonna really, cause my team to have to bend any weird way. Alternatively, we can bring in a partner that specializes in physical security. That's a better answer. And have them give you an estimate to put in a system that they can support properly for you. Because we all know here, not the subject of the stuff, there's a ton of risk in this. I mean, that's pretty much turning the inside of their network into a giant open flashing billboard that says, hey, overseas threat actors, I'm over here. Here's a Linux computer that can't be secured, that's open to the network, or the cameras won't work, because the business owner will get mad, they can't view it on their cell phone. So what's even better is to literally say, no, here's a professional that'll put something decent in, also still not my problem. And now rather than telling this company, not my problem, you're stupid, instead what you've said to them is, hey, that sounds like a really important business pain point, and I can absolutely direct you to something that will solve that pain without actually acquiescing to the nonsense you asked before. So that's it. Thank you for enabling my ego. These are some of our fabulous vendors. If now that the vendor pavilion's closed, I'll tell you which ones are my favorites if you want to know. You can find me on all of these socials, and if you wish to, you can sign up for help. We have a show deal going on with that link. Does anybody have questions, or do you just want to get out of here? Because there's alcohol very soon.